They mocked her poverty and ignored her pain. Now they wait outside her gate for mercy. Welcome to African Tales by Call, where African stories come to life. Subscribe and join our storytelling family. When Kesi Daramola first stepped off the rusty bus at Ridgeway Junction, she carried two things: a frayed canvas bag and a stubborn hope she refused to show. The town looked like it had been built from dust and impatience, sun-baked roads, iron roofs, and people who watched newcomers the way hawks watched field mice. She walked past the market stalls where women shouted prices and men argued over pepper sacks, and she headed toward the only address she had, Aunt Mavo's compound behind the old water tower. The gate was crooked, the walls stained, and the front yard crowded with plastic chairs that had seen better days. Aunt Mavo opened the door with a sleepy stare. "So you actually came," she said, wiping her hands on her wrapper. Kesi forced a smile. "Auntie, I had nowhere else." Mavo stepped aside. "Come in. But let me warn you, this house is not a charity." Kesi nodded quickly. "I'll work. I'll do anything. I just need a place to start." Inside, three cousins sat around a small television that wasn't even on. Their eyes moved over her like she was a strange object. The tallest one, a boy with sharp cheekbones, chuckled. "See the way she's dressed," he said. "Like a village pastor's assistant." A girl with a loud laugh slapped her knee. Maybe she ran away because she failed school. Kesi swallowed her anger. She had finished school. She had dreams. But she also had an empty pocket, and hunger made pride feel expensive. Mavo pointed to a thin mattress in a corner. "That is where you'll sleep." "Thank you," Kesi said softly. "Don't thank me yet," Mavo replied. "Tomorrow you'll follow me to the shop. You'll earn your space here." That night, Kesi lay awake listening to the town's distant noise and the cousins' whispers. She heard her own name twisted into jokes, heard them call her poor girl like it was her real identity. In the dark, she whispered to herself, "Just give me time. That's all I need." Morning arrived with shouting. Aunt Mavo was already dressed, her head scarf tied tight like she was preparing for war. She kicked the mattress lightly with her foot. "Wake up. The sun doesn't feed lazy people." Kesi sat up quickly. "Yes, Auntie." The cousins were eating bread and tea. Nobody offered her anything. The boy, his name was Zuno, a name he liked because it sounded sharp, tore his bread slowly and smirked. "Visitor," Zuno said. "In this house you don't eat for free." Kesi kept her voice calm. "I understand." Another cousin, the girl with the loud laugh, Rima, leaned back in her chair. "So what can you even do? Sweep? Wash? Or you want to become Big Madam in 1 week?" Kesi looked at her hands. "I can learn. I can work." Rima burst into laughter. "Hear her. She said she can learn." Aunt Mavo clapped once. "Enough noise. Kesi, carry these 2 sacks. We're going." They walked to the market shop. Mavo's small provisions store wedged between a phone accessories stall and a butcher's stand. The shop smelled of dried fish, soap, and hot dust. Mavo pointed at the shelves. "You'll arrange items, record sales, and keep your eyes open," she said. "If anything goes missing, you'll pay." Kesi's stomach tightened. "But Auntie, I don't have money to pay." "Then don't let anything go missing," Mavo snapped. The first customer, a woman with heavy bracelets, looked at Kesi and frowned. "New girl." Mavo answered for her. "My niece. Came to find life." The woman clicked her tongue. "These children. Everybody wants city life without work." Kesi forced another smile and began arranging sachet water and noodles. All day, customers talked over her head, and Mavo corrected her sharply for every small mistake. "Not like that," Mavo said, slapping Kesi's hand away from the ledger. "You want to ruin my records?" "I'm sorry," Kesi said. Zuno came by later with friends, pretending to browse. He whispered loudly enough for customers to hear. "That's the new housemaid." Kesi's face burned, but she kept stacking tins. She told herself she wasn't there to argue. She was there to build. Late evening, when they returned home, Mavo handed her a small plate of rice. Not much. Still, it was the first thing Kesi had eaten all day. "Eat fast," Mavo said. "Tomorrow is worse." Kesi held the spoon with trembling fingers. "Thank you, Auntie." Mavo scoffed. "Don't mistake duty for kindness." As Kesi ate, she stared at the ceiling and promised herself quietly, "One day, I'll have a gate so high that laughter can't climb over it." Weeks turned into months, and Ridgeway Junction began to feel like a place that wanted to crush people slowly. Kesi learned the shop's rhythm. The early morning rush for bread, the midday crowd buying noodles, the evening women haggling for kerosene. She learned how to count change fast, how to read Mavo's mood by the way she tied her scarf, and how to swallow insults without choking on them. One afternoon, Kesi suggested something small. "Auntie, if we keep a small notebook for debtors, it will reduce confusion." Mavo narrowed her eyes. "Who asked you to think?" Kesi tried again. Zuno, lounging outside, laughed. "She wants to teach Mama Mavo business." Rima clapped mockingly. "Our poor cousin is now a professor." Kesi's jaw tightened. "I'm not trying to disrespect. I'm trying to help." Mavo leaned closer, her voice low and sharp. "Listen to me, Kesi. Your job is to obey. If you want to run a shop, go and open your own." Kesi's heart pounded. That night, she sat behind the compound, near the small guava tree, and cried quietly where nobody could see. She wasn't crying because of the words alone. She was crying because her dreams felt far and her hands felt small. A soft voice interrupted her. "You're crying again." Kesi turned. It was Taro, the youngest cousin, quiet and usually ignored. He stood holding a small cup of water. "Take," he said simply. Kesi accepted it. "Thank you." Taro sat beside her. "Why do they talk to you like that?" Kesi stared at the dirt. "Because they think I'm nobody." Taro frowned. "But you're working hard." "Hard work doesn't stop mouths," Kesi whispered. Taro tilted his head. "So what will you do?" Kesi breathed in slowly. "I'll keep learning. I'll save small money. I'll leave when I can." Taro looked surprised. "Leave? Where will you go?" "I don't know yet," Kesi admitted. "But I know I can't stay here forever." Inside the house, laughter burst out. Zuno and Rima joking about her again. Kesi's fists clenched. Taro's voice dropped. "Zuno said you'll never become anything. He said poor people are born to kneel." Kesi swallowed, then lifted her chin. "Tell Zuno something for me." Taro blinked. "What?" "Tell him," Kesi said, her voice steady now, "that kneeling is not my ending. It's just the part of the story before I stand." Taro stared at her like he didn't fully understand, but he nodded anyway. "Okay." Kesi wiped her face and stood. As she walked back inside, she felt the same pain still there, but underneath it, something stronger was growing, patience with teeth. Kesi's first real chance came from a broken radio. It was a small thing, the kind people tossed aside without thinking. A customer left it on the shop counter, complaining it had stopped working. Aunt Mavo waved her hand. "Carry that rubbish away." Kesi picked it up carefully. "Auntie, can I keep it?" Mavo shrugged. "If you want to carry trash, carry." That night, Kesi sat on the floor with the radio in her lap. She didn't know much about repairs, but she remembered her late father used to open old electronics and explain things with patience. She found a loose wire, pressed it back, and suddenly the radio crackled to life. Rima walked in and froze. "How did you do that?" Kesi kept her eyes on the radio. "It was just a wire." Zuno appeared behind Rima. He scoffed. "So, you want us to clap because you fixed a radio?" Kesi didn't answer. She was listening to the voice coming through, an advert about a free weekend training for young people in basic phone and gadget repairs. Her heart jumped. The next day, Kesi mentioned it carefully to Mavo. "Auntie, there's a training this weekend. It's free. If I learn, I can help the shop and maybe fix customers' phones for extra income." Mavo stared at her like she was speaking a foreign language. "Training? Are you not already trained in suffering?" Kesi forced a small laugh to soften it. "Auntie, please. Just 2 days." Zuno cut in. "Mama, let her go. She wants to become engineer." Rima giggled. "Maybe she'll repair our poverty." Aunt Mavo hesitated, then waved her hand. "Go. But if you miss market day profit, you'll regret it." Kesi went. The training was held in a dusty community hall with plastic chairs and a generator humming outside. The instructor, a short man named Bemu, spoke with excitement. "Repair is business," Bemu told them. "People throw away what can be fixed. Your job is to see value where others see waste." Kesi felt those words sink deep. Value where others saw waste. That sounded like her whole life. After the training, Bemu pulled her aside. "You learn fast," he said. Kesi blinked. "I just listened." Bemu smiled. "Listening is rare. If you want, come by my kiosk after market hours. I can teach you more. But you must be serious." Kesi's throat tightened. "I'm serious." Back at home, Zuno mocked her. "Engineer Kesi, did you build a bridge?" Kesi met his eyes for the first time without flinching. "Not yet." Zuno laughed loudly. "Not ever." Keisai's voice remained calm. You'll see. Zuno's laughter faded slightly, as if her tone had disturbed him. Rima rolled her eyes and walked away. That night, Kesi lay on her mattress, staring at the ceiling. For the first time since arriving, her future didn't feel like a fog. It felt like a narrow path, but it was there, and she could walk it. Kesi began visiting Bemu's kiosk in the evenings, always after closing Aunt Mavo's shop. She moved quickly, afraid of questions, afraid of being stopped. The kiosk was nothing more than a wooden table under a faded umbrella, crowded with broken phones, wires, and tiny screwdrivers. To Kesi, it looked like a treasure ground. You're late, Bemu said the first evening, without looking up. I had to finish work, Kesi replied, placing her bag down. Bemu finally glanced at her. Excuses don't fix phones. Kesi nodded. Then teach me. Bemu smiled faintly and pushed a cracked phone toward her. Open it. She hesitated. What if I spoil it? You will, he said calmly. That's how learning works. As days passed, her fingers grew steadier. She learned to replace screens, clean charging ports, and identify fake batteries. Sometimes customers watched her with doubt. This girl, one man asked Bemu. She can fix it? Bemu answered without hesitation. She's better than most boys here. Keisai's chest warmed at that. But at home, things grew colder. One night, Zuno blocked her path. Why are you always coming back late? He asked suspiciously. I help at another place, Kesi said carefully. Rima laughed from the doorway. Helping who? Another man? Keisai's eyes flashed. Mind your mouth. Zuno stepped closer. You're getting bold. I'm getting busy, Kesi replied quietly and walked past them. That night, Aunt Mavo confronted her. If you bring shame into this house. I'm learning a skill, Kesi said, voice firm but respectful. I'm not doing anything bad. Mavo stared at her for a long moment. Just remember, you own nothing here. Kesi nodded. I know. But inside, she was already building something they couldn't see. Keisai's first earning came on a Tuesday afternoon. A woman from the next street brought a phone with a dead screen to Bemu's kiosk. It will cost more than the phone itself, the woman complained. Bemu looked at Kesi. Can you handle it? Kesi took a breath. Yes. Her hands shook slightly, but she remembered every step. When the phone lit up, the woman gasped. It works. She paid, and Bemu handed Kesi a small portion. It wasn't much, but it felt heavier than gold. That evening, Kesi hid the money inside her shoe. At home, Zuno noticed her smile. What are you smiling for? He asked. Nothing, Kesi replied. Rima squinted. Poor people smile too much when they imagine things. Kesi didn't answer. She cooked, cleaned, and slept, but her mind stayed awake, counting future possibilities. Weeks later, she started fixing small items for market women. Charging ports, weak batteries. Word spread quietly. Go to the thin girl near Bemu, people whispered. She's honest. Honest. That word followed her like a shadow. One evening, Taro whispered. Zuno says you think you're better than us now. Kesi paused. I don't think I'm better. I think I'm changing. Taro smiled softly. I like that. Money changed the air in the house before it changed Keisai's life. Aunt Mavo noticed first. You don't ask for food as much, Mavo said one night. I eat outside sometimes, Kesi replied. With what money? Kesi hesitated. I earn small. Zuno burst out laughing. Small thieves also earn small. Kesi faced him. I work. Rima rolled her eyes. Work that won't take you anywhere. Kesi smiled faintly. That's what you think. Soon, Kesi began saving seriously. She bought a small toolbox and kept it hidden. Her dreams sharpened, a stall, then a shop, then something bigger. One night, Bemu surprised her. Someone is selling a small kiosk near the bus stop, he said. Cheap. But you must act fast. Keisai's heart raced. I don't have enough. Bemu shrugged. Then keep saving. Or ask someone. Kesi laughed bitterly. Ask who? They both knew the answer. The breaking point came unexpectedly. Aunt Mavo accused Kesi of stealing money from the shop. You're the only one who touches the ledger, Mavo said coldly. Kesi felt the ground shift. Auntie, I didn't steal anything. Zuno folded his arms. Check her bag. Rima nodded eagerly. Yes. Check. Mavo reached for Keisai's bag. Kesi didn't stop her. She had nothing to hide. The bag was empty except for clothes and a notebook. Silence filled the room. Mavo scoffed. Even if you didn't steal, your presence brings loss. Keisai's voice shook, but she spoke clearly. Then let me leave. Zuno laughed. With what? Your dreams. Kesi lifted her chin. With my hands. That night she packed quietly. Taro watched with wide eyes. You're going, he whispered. Yes. Will you come back? Kesi paused. One day. She walked out before dawn, her toolbox heavy but her steps light. Kesi slept at Bemu's kiosk for 3 nights. On the 4th, she rented a corner space with borrowed money. The first day alone was terrifying. No aunt, no insults, no shelter if things failed. A man approached her stall. Can you fix this? Yes, Kesi said, heart pounding. By evening, she had made more than she ever had in a week. She whispered to herself, this is how it starts. Months later, Ridgeway Junction began to whisper again, but differently this time. That girl near the bus stop, people said. She fixes anything. Kesi worked late into the night, her hands steady, her eyes sharp. She no longer flinched at laughter. She was still poor, but no longer powerless. And far away, Aunt Mavo's gate creaked in the wind, unaware that one day it would open for Kesi again, but not on its own terms. Kesi's stall by the bus stop became her world. The ground was uneven, the sun unforgiving, but she stood there every day like she belonged. People tested her at first. You sure this will work? A driver asked, holding out a phone with a cracked screen. Kesi nodded. If it doesn't, you won't pay. The driver laughed. Bold girl. When the phone came back to life, he stared at her like she had pulled magic from dust. You're good, he admitted, dropping extra coins on the table. Kesi thanked him and tucked the money away carefully. Each coin had a purpose now. Bemu visited often, watching quietly. One evening he said, You've outgrown my kiosk. Kesi smiled tiredly. I still have a long way. You always will, Bemu replied. That's how builders think. She saved aggressively, skipping meals, buying only what she needed. At night, she planned, paper sketches of a future shop, lists of tools, small goals stacked on bigger ones. Trouble came in the form of Lecco, another repairer nearby. He leaned against her table one afternoon. You're taking my customers, he said flatly. Kesi kept working. I don't force anyone. Lecco scoffed. Girls like you don't last. Kesi finally looked up. Then watch me. Customers nearby murmured. Lecco walked away, but his eyes promised problems. 2 days later, Kesi returned to find her stall disturbed. Tools misplaced. A screen cracked. She closed her eyes and breathed. Panic wouldn't help. Bemu clenched his jaw. I warned you. Success attracts enemies. Kesi fixed what she could and kept working. That evening, customers returned anyway. She didn't even complain, one woman whispered. Strong girl. With savings growing, Kesi rented a small room near the bus stop. It had one window, cracked walls, and a door that barely locked, but it was hers. She sat on the floor that first night and laughed softly. So this is freedom. No insults. No shouting. Just silence and possibility. One afternoon, a well-dressed man approached her stall. His name was Harrow. You fix my driver's phone, he said. He won't stop talking about you. Kesi wiped her hands. Thank you. Harrow studied her setup. Can you handle bulk work? Yes, she answered immediately. Good. I manage delivery bikes. They break phones often. That contract doubled her income. Money began to change her posture. Not arrogance, confidence. She spoke clearly now, met eyes without fear. Ridgeway Junction noticed. That poor girl, someone said at the market. She's doing well. The words tasted strange, but good. One evening, Kesi crossed paths with Rima at the market. Rima froze, eyes scanning Kesi's tools and clean clothes. So, you're here now, Rima said stiffly. Kesi nodded politely. I've been here. Rima forced a laugh. Good for you. But her eyes followed Kesi with something like unease. Zuno came next, swagger reduced, voice cautious. I heard you're making money, he said. Kesi didn't stop working. I'm working. Zuno cleared his throat. Family should help family. Kesi looked up slowly. Family shouldn't laugh when someone is struggling. Zuno had no answer. Kesi reinvested everything. Better tools. A small signboard. A helper, Taro, who came quietly one morning. I want to learn, Taro said. Kesi smiled. Then I'll teach you. She paid him fairly. Taro worked hard. The stall became a shop, for walls, a door, a real counter. On opening day, Bemu stood beside her. You built this, he said simply. Kesi swallowed emotion. I survived first. Customers filled the room. Repairs lined the counter. Noise, laughter, business. At night, Kesi sat alone in the shop after closing, touching the counter like it might disappear. She whispered, "They laughed when I was poor." The memory didn't hurt as much now. It fueled her. Leko passed by one evening and stopped. He stared at the shop sign, then at Kesi. "You won," he muttered. Kesi met his gaze. "I worked." Leko walked away without another word. Aunt Mavo fell sick that same season. Word traveled fast. "She needs help," people whispered. "Hospital bills." Kesi heard and said nothing. Not yet. She locked her shop that night and stared at the road leading back to the old compound. Kesi stood at her gate now, tall iron bars freshly painted. She hadn't opened it yet. Inside, silence waited. Outside, footsteps from the past were drawing closer. She inhaled slowly. The story was far from over. The first knock came early the next morning. Soft. Careful. Kesi was inside the shop counting parts when she heard it. She froze. She knew that knock. It was the kind people used when pride was already tired. She didn't open the gate immediately. "Kesi," a weak voice called. "It's me. Aunt Mavo." Kesi closed her eyes briefly, then walked to the gate. Through the iron bars, she saw her aunt thinner, her wrapper loose on her frame, her eyes dull where fire once lived. "You're living here now?" Mavo asked, forcing a smile. "Yes," Kesi replied simply. Mavo cleared her throat. "You didn't even tell us." Kesi's voice stayed calm. "You said I owned nothing there. So I built something here." Mavo nodded slowly, like the words landed harder than expected. News spread quickly. By afternoon, Rima came. She stood outside the gate, pretending to admire the paint. "This place is nice," she said. "Thank you," Kesi replied. Rima laughed awkwardly. "Who would have thought?" Kesi met her eyes. "I did." Rima shifted. "Mama is really sick." "I heard," Kesi said. Silence followed. Rima waited for more. Kesi didn't offer anything. Zuno arrived last. He didn't knock. He stood with hands in pockets, eyes scanning the compound. "So it's true," he said. "You made it." Kesi leaned against the gate. "I made myself useful." Zuno sighed. "We were hard on you." "That's one way to say it," Kesi replied. Zuno swallowed. "We need help." Kesi looked past him, toward the road that once carried her away with nothing. "Need doesn't erase memory," she said softly. Zuno's shoulders slumped. That night, Kesi sat with Taro inside the shop. "They're begging," Taro said quietly. Kesi nodded. "Yes. Will you help them?" Kesi didn't answer immediately. She remembered the hunger, the mattress, the laughter. "I will help," she said finally. "But not the way they expect." Taro smiled faintly. "You've changed." "No," Kesi replied. "I've healed." Kesi paid the hospital bills directly. No announcement. No visit. Just receipt sent through a nurse. Aunt Mavo recovered slowly. Pride recovered slower. When Mavo finally came again, she bowed her head slightly. "I was wrong." Kesi opened the gate fully for the first time. "Sit," she said. They sat across from each other like strangers learning a new language. "I thought fear would make you obedient," Mavo admitted. "I didn't know it would make you strong." Kesi nodded. "Fear taught me what kindness should look like." Mavo's eyes watered. "Forgive me." Kesi exhaled. "I already did. But forgiveness doesn't mean return." Mavo understood that much. Rima tried to reconnect, too loudly, too late. "You should come around," she said. "People will talk." Kesi smiled. "They always do." Rima frowned. "You think you're better than us now." Kesi shook her head. "I think I'm better for myself." Rima left angry, confused, and smaller than she arrived. Zuno tried business next. "You could loan me money," he suggested. "We're family." Kesi met his eyes steadily. "I don't invest in mockery." Zuno scoffed, then laughed weakly. "You're cold." Kesi replied, "I'm careful." Zuno walked away empty-handed. Kesi expanded quietly. Another shop. Then a training space. She hired girls people overlooked. "Why help them?" someone asked. Kesi answered, "Because no one helped me kindly." The girls listened. They learned. They grew. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Kesi stood by her gate again. Outside, two distant figures lingered, uncertain, humbled, waiting. Inside, her lights were on. Her world was steady. They had laughed when she was poor. Now they waited at her gate, and she controlled whether it opened. The next morning, Kesi called a meeting inside her training space. The girls sat in a loose circle, some nervous, some excited. Tools lay on the table between them like quiet promises. Listen, Kesi said, her voice calm but firm. Skill can feed you, but discipline will keep you alive. If you're here to learn, you must respect the work. One girl raised her hand. Will people respect us? Kesi smiled slightly. Not at first. Respect usually comes late. The girls laughed softly, understanding more than they said. Business kept growing, but Kesi stayed grounded. She still swept her own shop. She still counted every expense. At night, she wrote plans by hand, just like she used to behind Aunt Mavo's compound. Sometimes she paused, remembering that girl with a frayed bag. She didn't know this was coming, Kesi whispered once, smiling to herself. Aunt Mavo visited less often now. When she did, she spoke gently, like someone handling glass. You've done well, Mavo said one afternoon. Kesi nodded. I did what I had to do. Mavo sighed. If I had encouraged you. Kesi interrupted softly. Then I might not have learned how strong I was. Mavo said nothing after that. Taro grew fast under Kesi's guidance. One evening he said, People ask about you everywhere. Kesi laughed. People used to ask what I was. Taro grinned. Now they ask how you did it. Kesi placed a hand on his shoulder. Tell them I didn't quit. Ridgeway Junction changed its tone. The whispers turned into admiration. That shop owner, people said. She's fair. That woman, others said. She remembers where she came from. Kesi heard it all and held none of it too tightly. Zuno tried once more, this time not for money, but for pride. You proved your point, he said stiffly. You're successful. Kesi met his eyes. This was never about proving anything to you. Zuno frowned. Then what was it about? Survival, Kesi replied. And self-respect. Zuno nodded slowly, finally understanding something he had missed for years. One quiet night, rain tapping lightly on the roof, Kesi sat alone and allowed herself to feel everything. Anger, relief, pride, sadness. She let it pass through her like weather. When it was done, she felt light. The next morning, she opened her gate wide. Not because she had to, but because she chose to. Neighbors waved. Customers walked in freely. Life flowed without fear. Kesi stood tall, no longer guarding wounds, only boundaries. A young girl approached shyly. Auntie, can you teach me? Kesi smiled warmly. Yes, but you must be ready to work. The girl nodded eagerly. Kesi saw herself there, years ago, asking silently for a chance. She built more than shops. She built space, for dignity, for learning, for second chances. But she never built a throne. Power, she had learned, didn't need shouting. One evening, Aunt Mavo stood at the gate again, watching Kesi from a distance. People passed Kesi with respect now. Some even bowed their heads slightly. Mavo whispered to herself, We laughed too soon. Kesi overheard that sentence and paused. She didn't turn around. Laughter had once been a weapon. Now it was just noise from another lifetime. She locked up for the night and stood still, listening to the hum of a life she had earned. No hunger. No fear. No borrowed mattress. Only quiet satisfaction. Kesi rested her hand on the gate one last time and smiled. Not in revenge, not in pride, but in peace. The gate didn't define her. What she built behind it did. They had laughed when she was poor. Now they begged at her gate. But Kesi had already moved beyond laughter, beyond begging, beyond the past. She had become the ending she once prayed for, and the beginning she never thought possible. Please subscribe, like, share, and on your notification bell for more betrayal stories.